We've been AWOL since our Christmas episode in December, and I wanted to explain why. I also wanted to chat with you to review what this podcast is all about and the topics that we have been discussing since we started the podcast in 2023, as well as some of the things I expect we will be talking about in 2025, although we do like to be reactive to things that are happening in our lives, and so that this can all change. None of us knows in life what's round the corner, do we? Hello, friends. This is Tony from Refinement, Not Retirement. It's great to have you with us on this, our final journey, our in refinement journey. Normally, I'd be doing this, of course, with my wonderful wife and soulmate, Christine, but she's just been so hard to get together with, to get back on air. She's just so busy right now. But I thought we've been off air for far too long, and I wanted to get back to you with our news and to explain why we've been absent without leave since our Christmas episode in December of 2024. It's now early February 2025. But first of all, for those who are unfamiliar with this podcast, Refinement, Not Retirement, I did want to do a little recap about what we've been discussing on this podcast so far, how it came about, how it all began, and the topics that we like to discuss. To help me do that, I've been looking back at previous episodes on our favorite podcast platform, Spotify for Podcasters, which is the one we use. And I'm going to use the episode history to remind me of the things that we have been talking about. And for those of you, as I say, who are unfamiliar with our podcast, I know it's a lovely thing that many people are still continuing to join us, and you'll no doubt want to go back to previous episodes to understand exactly what we're all about. And we've been discussing some really quite interesting things. Well, I hope you find them interesting. So let's just go over how it all began. So Christine and I are a couple in our late 60s. We used to live in the centre of London in Kensington. We were very fortunate to have a property there, which we could use as both our home base and to run our business, an international relocation business, which was really a wonderful business for us. It gave us a great life. The money that we managed to make from it has given us a nice nest egg to retire on. Well, not that we're exceptionally wealthy or anything like that, but we are, I suppose, comfortable. And it was all down to, really discovering quite by chance this amazing international relocation opportunity, which is actually one of the things that we have talked about on our podcast and which we will be talking more about. But we loved living in London. We didn't have a big property by any means. We lived in a small flat, but we also in the same building had an office suite. So it was really ideal. There we were in the centre of London, and we had a home, and we could walk literally down a couple of flights of stairs, and we were in our office. Brilliant not to have to do any commuting. Brilliant to be right in the centre of London, which was a great thing, an easy place for our international clients to visit us and so on. So it was a great base. And of course, being in London, we could walk to the most fabulous restaurants without ever using the car. And we would walk on nice evenings. We would walk to the West End, which was probably about 45 minutes walk to see any number of great shows. So that was a wonderful thing. And actually, although we did see ourselves at some point as probably wanting to retire to the country, it was not never something that we really thought about doing in the immediate future. It felt a sort of long way in the distance. But of course, all the time we were getting older. And then something happened which really gave us a enormous jolt. And that was, of course, COVID. When COVID hit in 2020, beginning of or early 2020, it really rocked our lives, and it made living in London, well, it turned living in London from a great pleasure to a bit of a nightmare for a while anyway. And it was the jolt we needed to make a move that we probably should have made earlier, because we now live in the Cotswolds, in a little village called Elmley Castle, which is the northwest extreme tip of the Cotswolds, sort of between Evesham and Pershore. And we absolutely love it here. We love our lives here. So we had our big escape to the country, and we had every intention of continuing to run our international relocation business, because it was very much a business that could be managed, operated remotely. We had done that long before COVID hit already, and it had been a big success in our business. And so we saw that as not at all an issue when we moved to the Cotswolds. But then there did come a point where we made a decision that we didn't want to spend the rest of our lives, heavily focused on the business. I mean, whilst it was, as I've said, a lovely business, it was sort of intense, and there was a lot of stress involved from time to time. And one becomes conscious, don't you, of how your life is a precious diminishing asset, and if you've got other things that you want to do, you need to carve out some time to do that. So we did decide to close the business at the very end of 22. So 2023, when we started this podcast, was our first year without working. So we talk about all that right at the beginning of our podcast, which I see our very first episode was sort of around September, October of 23. One of the first things that we talk about when we came to leave London, and we found we were really, really lucky, and we talk about all this too, but we found a fabulous village, which I've already mentioned, Elmley Castle, but we also found a wonderful house that really sort of suited us in every way. And this was my sort of idea. I've always loved boating, and I thought, wouldn't it be nice to buy a narrowboat? So we had our narrowboat experience, and I can't remember how many episodes we did on it. It's called our narrowboat experience, but it was a, shall we say, very interesting little diversion, which, well, if you care to dip into those episodes, you'll hear all about it and how that ended. It was a bit of a, well, not a bit of a, it was very much a huge decision for me, particularly, to quit work, because I've always been a bit of a workaholic, and I knew that the time was right when we decided to close for all kinds of reasons, but it did it did make me a little bit concerned as to how I was going to feel about not having that purpose in my life, which had been so much, such a big part of me, such a big part of my identity, uh, going back, to my, to the time I was sort of 20 years old. I never did anything else other than, you know, work work in a small business. But that there's a long story of as to how it turned from a very old-fashioned property practice into a relocation business, and that's something that we talk about also. But I was concerned about that, and I talk about my feelings in some of the early episodes, and actually Christine reacts in one of the episodes in October of 23. She actually reacts to my talking to camera uh, on my own about how I was feeling about that, so that you can dip back into that to understand our story. I'm now looking at the episode list, and I see that it looks like we did 4 episodes on our narrowboat experience, the fourth one being entitled Our Narrowboat Experience Turns Ugly, and that will give you a clue as to what happened there. So we talk about, as time went on, we talked about things that we described as our the refinements that we'd made in our lives. And I suppose that the narrowboat experience was a refinement that turned out to be the opposite of a refinement, but we had to go down that journey in order to learn that. Otherwise, we'd never have known, would we? But we've we've had refinements, big and small. We talk about when we moved to the Cotswolds, how one of the wonderful things that we did was to have have a hot tub installed. I said happy because it was installed by a great company called Happy Hot Tubs, actually. And that's turned out to be a refinement that went right and continues to be right. We use our hot tub every day nearly, and it's a big joy to have a soak there, and we can discuss our lives and all the things that we're doing. We particularly enjoy having a hot tub after one of our after playing pickleball. Pickleball is a big refinement in our life, a big joy. We unfortunately had a gap of about 2 years after we left London before we managed to discover a place and a group of people that we could play pickleball with. We love pickleball, and we talk a lot about it in our episodes. In fact, I see that one of the earlier episodes, when was that? So that was in November 23. I did an interview. I interviewed Karen Mitchell, one of the founding directors of Pickleball England, our the association, the English association for our sport of pickleball. She is a very interesting woman to listen to. She has done amazing things for our sport. And so if you have any kind of interest in pickleball, you'll want to check back on that episode and other episodes where we discuss pickleball, and we'll certainly be discussing it more. We ran with another couple when we were in the London area. We ran a pickleball club called Wasps, and then when we moved here to the Cotswolds, as I mentioned, we couldn't find anything for a couple of years, but we eventually did find a wonderful group of people playing pickleball in Winchcombe, the Cotswolds village of Winchcombe, and we formed a group of players who want to play competitively as opposed to simply social pickleball, because we love competitive pickleball. And that group is called Cotswolds Picklers. We have a Facebook page called Cotswolds Picklers. If you want to make contact with us and find out anything about what we do, here in the Cotswolds, pickleball wise. That was great. We also talk on our, as I'm going through the episode headings here, reminding myself, we also talk a lot about one of the biggest refinements in our lives. Some people find it intriguing, others find it really irritating, and I understand both of those positions. But we talk about our veganism. We both went vegan. I went vegan first. Christine followed me, kicking and screaming initially, sometime afterwards. But now she is a quite a vociferous follower of veganism. Yeah, we talk about that a lot. So let's just have a look. I'm trying to, as I say, remind myself of things that we have talked about. We talk about, let's say, oh yes, another topic that we talk a lot about is our love of electric cars. We've had, I think, about 7 electric cars, and we would never, ever go back to an ICE car. That's an internal combustion engine car. We currently have a Tesla Model 3 Highland, and we also have as a local runaround a Mini electric, and we love both of those vehicles. Although I'm going to tell you right away that it's not all plain sailing with Tesla, and I will be this. The one that we have at the moment is our third Tesla, and we have not found the company to be a great company in terms of providing customer service for what is supposed to be a premium car. It's certainly a costly car, and I will be doing a review. One of the episodes that we will be doing shortly is a review of our 1 year of ownership. It's now a year old in this month, of our Tesla Model 3 Highland, and I will be giving you my opinion of that vehicle, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So we have done some long trips in the Teslas that we've owned. One we discussed on in September of 23, which was a 2,000-mile road trip through France. Everybody talks about range anxiety in electric cars, and we give you the skinny on that. Before we moved into this stage of our lives, what I describe as our final journey, and this was a big part of our lives, and I guess it was a big refinement at the time, as though we wouldn't have described it as such at the time. We were in our 40s, and we purchased a property in Southwest Florida in Naples, and we have several episodes. I think again it might be 4 or more, which we call A Place in the Sun, Our Refined Life in Florida. It was a very, very interesting time in our lives. In many ways, a very life-changing experience. And we go back there at least once a year to Naples. It just happens to be really the Wimbledon location for pickleball. They have the biggest tournament there every year in around April, March time. Although when we lived there, we didn't ever play pickleball. But we discovered pickleball as a result of our friends telling us about it, our friends who were tennis friends, because we were big tennis players when we lived in Southwest Florida. I should say we lived there seasonally. So we were there in the winters, which is the best time to be there. So that's an interesting story. We have an episode called Verdict: Was Buying a Place in the Sun Worth It? And that's, a lot of people have told us that they're thinking of buying a place in the sun. And we give you our views based on our 12 years experience. of having that property. Actually, we started it with a condominium, well, flat there, and then we moved on. We upgraded to a house with a pool. So we have a lot of experience. So there are some less huge refinements. I talk about falling in love with a Japanese toilet, which I am still in love with. So that's an interesting one too. And I'm seeing as I go through this list here that we're now in 2024. And at the beginning of 2024, I talk about 1 year of being in refinement, how quitting work changed our lives. Well, we talk about that. Uh, there are sort of things that I don't need to tell you about here because you can see if you look at the episode list, we're on all the major podcast platforms. I see that we do talk about the Tesla Model 3 Highland that we acquired in February of 24. And we talk about living with it and what it was like. And I think probably our views have changed since I recorded that episode. It'd be interesting to see how that episode will compares to the one that I will be doing shortly after 1 years of ownership. Then after that, we started getting. I suppose I should say I started getting very interested. Now I'm having time on my hands because I'm not having to be concentrating on work the whole time. I got very interested in Trump and his legal problems, which I suppose became a bit of an obsession with me, really. And I do multiple episodes, following that particular story, which of course we know all know how that we all now know how that ended. And it's really quite mind-boggling to me what the Americans have done in choosing this guy. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. So yeah, there's a lot. I'm afraid there's quite a lot of stuff about Trump, and interspersed with other things. And now, where am I on the list? Around towards the end of 24, I talk about my dad's war journey because, of course, again, not working, I sort of had time to try and delve into my past, and my father's experience in the war was a huge thing. There's an episode called From Dunkirk to Silent, My Dad's War Journey, in November of 24. We talk about a piece of litigation that I did when we sued the Lawn Tennis Association. But I was particularly interested, well, that the particular episode that I'm looking at here in 2024 was really when the LTA was trying to push Pickleball England out as the governing body and to replace it as the LTA, which I took a very dim view of. And we do talk somewhere. I can't remember where this fits in because I can't actually immediately see the episode about the litigation, but it's an interesting story. But I became very exercised, I suppose, about the LTA trying to muscle in on pickleball. And I'm very glad that the end of that story was a good one. Okay, so just still continuing to look. We ended 2024 with the Christmas special that I talked about at the beginning of this episode. And I wanted, as I say, to explain why we have not been around since then, not been on air since then. And we've had sort of quite an emotion, well, not quite, we've had an emotional time in the last couple of months because we're very blessed to have four wonderful daughters. Our youngest daughter has our youngest grandchild. We have seven grandchildren. We're very blessed in that respect. This newest granddaughter is born to our youngest daughter, and it was discovered that she has a hole in the heart, and we all thought that this was, probably quite a regular thing that could easily be fixed. It turned out not to be that. It turned out to be a big hole in the heart that therefore required surgical intervention, if actually open heart surgery. And it was quite clear that this little bundle was having problems living. She was finding it hard to breathe. It was awful. I mean, just seeing her tiny little body and her little chest, she struggled to breathe. I forget what the medical term is for it, but you'd see her little chest suck right in as she was sort of gasping, and her body was working so hard to keep her alive because of the defect in her heart, that she wasn't gaining weight, and in fact, at one stage, she was going backwards in that respect. And the medical people, who were wonderful, became increasingly concerned about it, and ultimately said she has to have open heart surgery. And my daughter and her partner, had had a very difficult time hearing about, the risks attached to this surgery. And the end of the story is a good one. We went up to, a couple of weeks ago, we went up to Liverpool to be with the family who were there, supporting our daughter and her little family. She has another daughter, a 2-year-old, who absolutely loves the new arrival, the little baby with the hole in the heart. And we were up there to support the family through this surgery, which was a really tough time, because it was a roller coaster. The seeing what had to happen to this little bundle of life, with all these tubes attached to it and to her, and the fact that they had to sort of open her up big time, and what a trauma that must be to the little body. But we were on tenterhooks the day of the surgery, of course, because it could have gone either way. That you are prepared that you might have a horrible bit of news. But the surgeon was delighted with the way the surgery went, and we sort of all felt a sense of huge relief. But that soon changed, because what we didn't realize was that the crucial time is when the surgeons hand over to the intensive care people, who have to, because you never know how the body's going to react, do you? To there was foreign material put inside the baby. There was bovine heart material or whatever. I don't know what they use, but it's organic type of material. But and nobody knows how the body is going to react to that. And the baby crashed. They have a crash team that has to come in and try and bring the baby back to life, and that happened multiple times. And all the time, we were just wondering what we were going to hear the next time a bit of news was released. But fortunately, after a really horrid time. This was at the Alderhay Hospital, by the way, just outside Liverpool, which is a very famous children's hospital, on a par with Great Ormond Street. Uh, I was very impressed when we visited the hospital. They were very, very kind people, and obviously very expert in what they do. But the end of the story is that, well, her little life pump is now pumping properly, and what a difference it's made. She's feeding well. She looks great. And that's just been fantastic. But I did want to give you that explanation as to why we haven't been able to think about our podcast for a while, and I'm sure, dear listener, you will understand why we've been away now. So I'm hoping that we will be back together on air ASAP. We're looking forward to coming back and talking about all sorts of subjects. And we love our community. We do have a Facebook page, which is the same title as the podcast, Refinement, Not Retirement. So you can visit there anytime. You can communicate with us either openly or, if you prefer, as most people seem to just send us private messages. That's fine. Either way is absolutely fine with us. But for now, I'm going to say that that's all from me. So it's goodbye from me, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Goodbye, everybody. Starting. Starting in three, two, one. Hi.